You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows.
And welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I'm Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course I will answer as many as I can, or you can check out our webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. Old shows, new shows. Leave your questions, leave your comments, and of course that all-important donate button, which helps us improve the show and get the show out there and takes care of our costs in the studio, and it's really greatly appreciated for all of you who help us with that donate button. The calendar is in a fascinating spot right now, especially for this week's Torah portion. Why? This week's portion is Shmini, which is the number 8. It is the 8th day of the dedication of the tabernacle of the Mishkan. It is the day that Aaron and his sons will become the Kohanim, the priests. And it's also the beginning of the month of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the beginning of the month of Nisan. So why is that fascinating this year? Because next Tuesday is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And this Sabbath, we're reading the portion of Shmini. So it's awfully close, calendar-wise, when the day actually took place. Usually, the Torah portion of Shmini is read after Passover, which means it's 3.5 weeks at least. No, it's going to be more, right? It's at least a month after Nisan. But when there's a leap year, so the month of Nisan comes out before Passover, and partially it just works out that way this year, that what we call Parshat Chodesh, well, maybe we'll talk about it later in the show, there's 4 special Torah portions that we read leading up to Passover. We talk about the Shkolim coins and remembering Amalek, and the Torah portion about the red cow, just to get us ready for the Passover holiday. And the last one is Parshat Chodesh, is this Torah portion talks about the new moon and also getting ready for Passover. So it's just interesting, just in the calendar, how that works this year. And if we have time, we'll get more into it. But the Torah portion is Shmini. Shmini means the 8th. It was the 8th day. Now, it's the first day that Aaron and his children will be the priests, the Kohanim, but they've been practicing for a week. So we've had a whole week of Moses teaching them what to do. They even ask, Moses is not a priest, so what was he wearing? Right? Was he wearing a tie? No, unlikely. And as the priests have certain clothes and garments they have to wear. If they don't wear those garments, they're in trouble. What's Moses wearing? So there's really, for a regular priest, there's 4 sets of clothing. There's the long shirt and the pants and a belt. It's really just a rope that goes around and around and around, and a hat. Moses just had the shirt. I'm sure he had pants also, but all he had to wear was that long, beautiful, white shirt made of linen. That's what he wore during the 7 days that he's teaching everybody what to do. Now, it is fascinating. Again, it's the 8th day. As the Torah could have just as easily said, okay, we practiced for a week. Now is the first day that the priests will be serving. But instead, it calls it the 8th day. It's like just so fascinating. They've been practicing for 7 days. You don't say we practiced for our production for the last 2 weeks and now it's day 15. No, now is the real thing. The real thing is today. But instead, the Torah calls it the 8th day, which is fascinating. And it happens to be the number 8 in itself is fascinating because there are so many things in the tabernacle that have to do with the number 8. For example, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, has 8 sets of different clothing that he wears. I told you before the 4 garments that a regular Kohen wears. Well, the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, has another 4. He's going to have it's debatable what it looks like, but either some type of blue robe or just some type of it maybe had sleeves, or maybe it was just more squarish with a circle in the middle and had those bells and pomegranates on the bottom. That's called the me'il. He's going to have the apron. He's going to have the breastplate, the choshen, the ephod. He's going to have the tzitz. That's the gold plate on his forehead. And then it's debatable if he has the same type of belt or different. The shape or the wrapping that they used for his hat was a little different. He has 8. That's number 1. Another 8 is that 4 of the vessels had to be carried when they traveled in the desert, and they were carried with poles. You have the ark, you have the table, you have the inside altar and the outside altar. So and each of them gets 2 poles. Okay, 2 times 4, 8. Okay. A sacrifice to be brought needs to be minimum 8 days old. Circumcision, day 8. That has nothing really to do with the Mishkan. But there's a lot of 8. So what is this number 8? 8 is actually a spiritual number. Why? Because in nature, everything is 7. You want to say 7 days of the week? You don't have to. You want to say on a piano or any musical instrument, there's 7 chords, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Then do is just the next, whatever, octave up, whatever the right word is for that. There's 7 keys. Spiritually, by the way, there's an 8th chord. I couldn't tell you what it is because we don't know what it is yet. 8 is always the number used for above nature. And the whole tabernacle, the whole concept of the tabernacle, that God will bring his presence down to this world, is obviously all spiritual. For all spiritual, we got to get into number 8. So perhaps that's what the Torah is pointing out. It's saying it was on the 8th day. We got to teach everybody that spirituality is above nature. If you think spirituality works with nature, it doesn't make any sense. A boy in class said to me today, what we're discussing, something to the effect of, how could that work? I said, you're asking me how that could possibly work? It had to do with something spiritual. We're learning the plagues. Maybe it's one of the plagues. I think I know what it was. He wanted to know, we were talking about the plague of hail. So there's rain and lightning and thunder and hail. So I think he wanted to know, he didn't ask it this way, but I think his curiosity was, if a Jewish person was walking outside during the plague of hail, did he need an umbrella? Okay, that's a good question. And I told him, no. For the Jew walking down the street, it was sunny and clear skies. He said, well, how could that be? I said, you're not really asking me with miracles, how could it be, right? Because it's a miracle. So I don't have to know how it could be. How it could be is turning everything into nature. And we always try to turn things into nature. What did they ask me? They wanted to know, I think, by the plague of boils. I think they wanted to know if the magicians could have done something to protect themselves. I said, again, it's like we're missing the point, right? They can't, I know what it was. I taught them in the plague of boils that there was no position that an Egyptian could be in that he wouldn't be in pain, because the boils were on the bottom of their feet and on the side, and you couldn't sit, and you couldn't stand, and you couldn't lie down, and not on your back, and not on your front, and there was no good position. So they said, what do you mean they could do magic? Well, maybe they could fly. I said, so you're trying to say that God wants to bring a plague, and they have a way to protect themselves from the plague. I said, it's not happening. I said, that is not the way God is bringing a plague. So you have a question, why couldn't they fly? I don't know why they couldn't fly. But it's impossible that they could have done something that would protect them from the plague. Then it just takes away everything we're trying to learn. But okay, so we're discussing the number 8. 8 is above nature. Okay. Once we're talking numbers, there's another famous number that relates to this week's Torah portion, and that is the number 10. There's a medrash that says this day, this Yom HaShmini, the 8th day, took 10 crowns. Now, how you count to 10, there's multiple ways of how it's possible to count to 10. But I'm going to list many things that happened on this day, and there's different midrashim that will do its own different counting, but just to give us a feeling, what's going on this day? It's a day of firsts. First priest, right? Aaron and his children, the first priest, the first Kohanim. It's the first sacrifice brought in the tabernacle. It's the first day that the priest will bless the Jewish people. It says Aaron comes down and he blesses the Jewish people. That's referring to what we call Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the priests. Right? Yivarech Hashem Yishmerecha, Yireh Hashem Elech V'Yichuneka, Yisah Hashem Panav Elecha V'Yisem Lecha Shalom. This is the first of that day. First day, the fire from heaven came down. We're going to see that fire sticks around through the end of the first temple. It's the first sacrifice for Rosh Chodesh. We've been talking that it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It was the beginning of the month of Nisan. It is the first of the princes' sacrifices. There's 12 princes, one per tribe, and they came to Moses. They wanted to bring all their sacrifices together, and Moses speaks to God, and God says one per day, and the tribe of Judah will be first. It's the first day of no outside altars. So once, till then, if a person wanted to bring a sacrifice, you just make bring a sacrifice in your backyard, put up your own altar, and bring a sacrifice. Once the tabernacle exists, no private altars anymore. You must come to the tabernacle. It is a great day of joy. And if you are Aaron's wife, Elisheva, this is the best. Your husband's a high priest. Your sons, your 4 sons, are the priests. Your brother gets to bring a sacrifice. I mean, you are on top of the world. And this greatest day of joy comes crashing down. This greatest day of joy for this Elisheva comes crashing down because her 2 sons overstepped their bounds. This is Nadav and Avihu, and they were great people. It says they used to walk behind Moses and Aaron and say, when will these 2 old goats die so we can take over, because we'll do a better job leading the Jewish people. And they were great people. Maybe they would have done a better job, hard to know. And the fire, when it comes down, and we're going to get there, when that fire comes down, it actually enters Nadav and Avihu, kills them, and then goes onto the altar. So her day of great joy, and her 2 sons die. And I saw it's fascinating. Throughout history, there have been great people that they are on a high, and they come crashing down. Abraham, he wins the war with the 4 kings. He has his son Isaac when he's 100 years old. God says, slaughter your son. Isaac is saved from the sword, becomes wealthy. In the end, he's blind. Jacob sees the ladder, right, with God on top. He's having this dream where God is right there. Right? He's on top. He has Joseph, and Dinah is raped, and his brother wants to kill him, and his father-in-law wants to kill him. Joshua conquers the land of Israel, defeats the 31 kings, can't have any sons. So King Solomon talks about it in Proverbs, right? He says there's a time to be happy, there's a time to be sad. Of course, we should enjoy the good times. Don't get me wrong. The world's a wheel. But if you think that you could be on top and you're in control of everything and you are happy because of what's happening to you, if you think that's the way it is, that you're in control and you can make sure that you're happy, you are not in control. No one is in control. Really, the best way to do it is to look at it that you're not in control. But look at all the beautiful things God gave me. Whatever we have, whatever our life situations are. There's good, there's not so good. There's things that make us happy. There are things that make us unhappy. We got to look at the life through a prism and say, thank you, God, for all the good you have given to me. And things are good. I'm not saying we're all fantastically wealthy. I did not buy my lottery ticket yet. It hasn't helped buying them, by the way. I've been buying them for weeks, and the price keeps getting higher. So either God figures I need more money, or God feels I don't need any of that money, and I don't know if winning the lottery would actually make me happy. It would probably make me miserable. But we all like the idea of winning a lot of money anyway, so that's what we do, right? It's a good scheme because, I don't know, 1 out of 175 million chances. You know, I don't know about you guys, but when I buy the lotto ticket, I almost get none of the numbers correct. I think last week I got 2 numbers correct, but since I didn't get the Powerball, so I don't get any, I still have the ticket somewhere. I'm going to see if I won like $2, but I don't think so. But in any case, we are the ones that create if we are happy by our attitude, not by outside forces. Outside forces, there are things that will make us very happy, and there are things that can make us miserable. We just have to choose how to look at it. I read to my class an interesting story. It happens to be that in my class over the last couple of weeks, the trait that we're working on is simcha, or joy if you want to use that word, happiness if you want to use that word. So the story goes that somebody went to the Rebbe of Mezrich, I believe. Had a lot of problems. So the Rebbe says to him, I can't help you. Go to Zusha. Zusha studies in the back of the study hall. He'll take care of you. So the guy says, Zusha? The guy whose clothes is torn and tattered? He says, yeah, go to him. Okay. So he goes back to the study hall, sees Zusha, and he sort of makes an announcement. Zusha, the Rebbe of Mezrich said that you can help me. Zusha looks up and says, me? I can help you? I don't see how I can help you. But tell me what the problem is. Let me see. Maybe. So he says, I got I'm suffering from a lot of different things, from physical and financial and family, and maybe you could help me. How do you deal with suffering? So Zusha looks at him and says, suffering? I know what you're talking about. I never suffered a day in my life. I don't have any problems. Zusha, the guy says, well, let's not kid ourselves. You are poor. You don't know where supper is coming from. The clothes you wear in tatters. Your children are suffering. Your wife is suffering. You're living in a hut. You got problems. So Zusha says, no. Every morning I wake up and I say, thank you, God, that I woke up. And now I get to live another day. These things that you're talking about, those are God's problems. How is God going to get me food? How is God going to make sure my children are healthy? How is God going to make sure I have clothes to wear? How is God going to make sure that my wife has what to make for supper and that the house doesn't leak too badly? Those are God's problems. I don't have any problems. It's an attitude thing. And I think it's important that we look at the picture. If we want outside factors to make us happy, there'll be another problem that will come along. I must live here. I must have this kind of house. I'll be happy when I have this kind of car. All this is silly. Because if it's an outside thing that you need to make you happy, it's so easy for God to say, okay, here it is, but I'm going to make you miserable anyways. Right? So this fire that comes down, right, what happened? So Moses told Aaron, you're going to prepare all the sacrifices and slaughter them and cut them up and put them on the altar, but no fire. Even though on a regular day there might be a command to bring a fire, today God will bring down the fire. Because this will show God's bring his presence down and that you, Aaron, are forgiven for the golden calf. And now no fire. So Aaron says to his brother Moses, you told me this is going to be my forgiveness. This will cause that God will forgive me. And now there's no fire. Must be that God doesn't want to forgive me. So he tells his brother, you got to help me out. So Moses said, we're going to go into the tabernacle and you and I will pray. And they pray, and sure enough, God brings down the fire. Now, it is interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all of them. There's 12 times, at least in the prophets, that it talks about a fire coming down from God to this world. 6 of them are for good reasons, generally to consume a sacrifice. 6 of them are not so good. What are the 6 good ones? 1, the fire that came down this day, on the 8th day. It happens to be that same fire did good, and we'll call it not so good because it also killed Nadav and Avihu, right? So sometimes that fire comes down to punish. Sometimes that fire comes down to do good stuff. The next time was one of the judges. His name was Gidon. And the angel came and said to him that you're going to lead the army. That's the army, right? They were fighting Midian, and God says the army is too big, and he had to whittle down the army from, 13,000 or something, and he whittled it down, and God said, nope, you got to get it smaller, and he ends up with 300 soldiers, and they're fighting this army of, humongous army. So Gideon says, I need a sign. Right? I'm going to bring a sacrifice. You let God consume it, and God sends down a fire and consumes it. And we have, of course, the famous Samson that they want to say thank you to this angel they don't realize it's an angel, who's promising them that they'll have a child. So the angel says, you can't give me any presents, but if you bring a sacrifice, I'll get it to God. So they bring a sacrifice, and the angel touches it, and the fire comes down from heaven and consumes the fire. You also have that King David, before he was King David, he bought this field. He was already King David. He bought the field, he basically bought the Temple Mount. And from the person that he bought it from, he bought his cows and some wood, and he created an altar, and God again consumes with a fire. And then we also have two more. When King Solomon dedicated the temple, so the altar, King Solomon was bringing like hundreds of thousands of sacrifices. I don't know where these animals came from. But there were so many sacrifices being brought, there was nowhere to burn them. Like the altar was just not big enough, even though it had the fire from God. So they basically consecrated the whole floor, and God set down a fire and consumed all those sacrifices. So it would seem from there it wasn't the same fire that was already on the altar consuming everything. And then the last one, of course, is the famous story with Elijah on Har Carmel, Mount Carmel, when he's having it out with the 400 idol priests, and they have the whole Jewish, all the Jews are by the mountain, and he says, "You guys go first, and we have 2 cows over here, and you take one, and I'll take one, but no fire. You can sing and dance and yell and scream and whatever you want." And I was telling my class about this because it came up for something else. It says the cow didn't want to go. The cow that was picked by the idol worshippers refused to go to them. So Elijah says to the cow, by you not getting burnt, that will sanctify God's name even more. So the cow was in agreement, and it let itself be led away. So there, it was Elijah's turn. So Elijah, he poured water all over the place, and he set up the sacrifice, and he calls out, Hashem Hu Elokim, right? God is God. He says it twice, and down comes the fire, and everybody says, yeah, Elijah, you're right, it's God, and whatever. So those are the 6 times. Those are the 6 times that it came down in a good way. What are the 6 times it came down in anger? So here, another one of you get killed. In the desert, Torah portion by Baloscha, so it's going to be a couple months till we get there. There was a fire that came down and consumed the complainers. Korach, who starts up with Moses, so they all come out with their fire pans, and they make the spices, the ketores. We didn't finish it up. But you got the gist of it. Anyways, the music is playing. Hope you enjoyed it short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to all the wonderful sponsor listeners. You know I can't do without you. Thank the wonderful production team. We have Alan in the back today. I've left you some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Till next time, don't forget to think about it.
A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. There's a house we can build, every room inside is filled.
How did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to
Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com, and of course I will answer as many as I can. Or you can check out our amazing webpage at letstalktorah.net. No apostrophes, letstalktorah.net. And you can find the archives and the newest shows and comments, questions, whatever you want. You ask them, we'll answer them. Just had somebody set up for after Passover. We're gonna have a guest on the show in a couple weeks, and it's just an easy way. If somebody wants to join the show, send the message. I get the messages. It's great. It's fantastic. And of course, there's the all-important donate button. You can hit that donate button. You can help the show grow. We have different levels for you. If you want to shout out a happy birthday, anniversary, in memory of, and keep it anonymous, we can do that as well. Whatever works for you, of course, works for all of us around here. So you may be aware, if you live in this world, there is going to be an eclipse next week, Monday. We actually are sending the children home early from school. They're afraid, and a lot of schools are closing. Most schools, I think, are closing the whole day. They're afraid, for good reason, that since dismissal time is like not the full eclipse, I think the full eclipse, at least here around Detroit, we're going to be like 99%. That's close enough. But I know people are driving down to Toledo. But children are children. right? So how are you going to make sure that all these children, when they're outside waiting for the buses, are not going to want to look up? Because you can look up at the sky. It's not going to burn your eyes. At least you don't think it's going to burn your eyes. And yeah, and you could try to tell everybody they have to wear the glasses and they can't look up, but it's a very hard thing to take responsibility for. Even people driving, right? The sun's right there. Like, how are you not looking at it? So you really got to have those glasses. Don't worry, I bought a whole pack. I have like 20 of them or something. Because I remember last time, by the time I woke up and wanted to buy glasses, it was $10 of glasses, $50 of glasses, $100 for a pair of glasses. I had a brother-in-law had some extra for me. But this time I bought a whole bunch, give them to my kids. I'll even probably give them extra if a friend needs or something. So the eclipse is coming, and they're going to end school early, let the children get home. Parents can take care of them. You want to have glasses, look at to see what it looks like. I mean, I'm fascinated. I think it's amazing. And I just saw something, and I forgot to write down the name of what it's called. I think it begins with a P. It's a funny word. But there's a certain effect. And the effect is that green colors becomes brighter, red colors become duller. It has to do with, I guess, the rays of the sun, and when you see the brightness of the sun, when you don't see the brightness. So they want people like wearing like Christmas colors. But in any case, the world is a fascinating place. And one of the fascinating topics in this week's Torah portion is kosher animals. Why is it fascinating? For many reasons. We're going to, as we get through the different pieces of what makes something kosher, at least in the animal kingdom, we'll see a lot of fascinating ideas. But before we get to what makes something kosher, I think we need to discuss first why kosher. And would kosher be a reason for even somebody who's not Jewish to keep kosher? So it seems, according to Maimonides, there would be a reason for everyone to keep kosher. And that's why during the Black Plague, they were blaming it on people coming from pigs or something. And the Jews were therefore responsible because they weren't getting the Black Plague, which wasn't true. The Black Plague affected the Jewish populace as much as anybody else in Europe. But it was a good thing to blame Jews on because, why not? But everybody, for the most part, argues on Maimonides. They said it has nothing to do with health. It is not a health thing that the Torah is telling us to keep kosher. So what is it? So most of the commentaries say that when a Jewish person only eats non-kosher, it leaves a mark. It has an effect. It affects our spirituality. It's fascinating. The last show we were talking about day 8, and 8 is a spiritual number. Kosher is also a spiritual concept. Not only that, it says that for a Jewish person, if he doesn't keep kosher, even when he repents, generally speaking, repenting wipes out the sin. Not only that, it says repenting has the ability to take a sin and turn it into a positive. That's how powerful repenting is. And to a certain extent, that would be true if a person eats something that's not kosher. The problem is that it has an effect on our soul. And it says it stuffs up the heart. It makes Torah study more difficult. The damage is done. Simon Shafal Hirsch talks a lot about this. He says this command of keeping kosher, God gave the Jewish people a path to play as a spiritual function in this world, right? When people say you are what you eat, spiritually in this case. Right? As Maimonides takes it, you are what you eat. that it affects you health-wise. But others are learning that you are what you eat. As far, again, it doesn't mean you have to become a vegetarian. As those who want to be vegetarians say, if you eat a cow, so you should have tendencies of a cow, or a goat, or a sheep, or a chicken, right? And there's no way for me to answer this question, right? And as God said, these animals you could eat, and spiritually it will not have an effect, or maybe it'll have a good effect on you. Perhaps there is, I believe it's Rabbeinu Bechai, it could be Ramban as well, that if you notice which animals we're allowed to eat, they're all animals that are chaste, not the chaser. We don't eat the chaser. We eat the chasee, if there's such a word, right? The animals that are hunted, right? The lions, they're hunting the cows, wolves, right? They're always worried about coyotes, wolves, right? Farmers are always worried about them because they're attacking their livestock, right? Cows do not hunt. Cows eat grass, right? Sheep do not hunt. Goats do not hunt. Deer certainly don't hunt, right? They're the ones that are hunted, right? So, and for the most part, that's the meats that people eat because maybe it's just easier to get to. But the point is that even to eat meat, so God says this meat you can eat, because those are the animals that are chaste. And God protects those that are chaste, right? So it becomes fascinating. I'm not saying that you can't eat meat because it makes you into an animal, even though we say you are what you eat. You eat a tomato, you're not a tomato, right? But spiritually, eating non-kosher affects my ability to study what kind of person I become. Non-kosher food corrupts. But again, only somebody Jewish because the Jewish person is the one who has to be spiritual. So does it mean that a non-Jew can't be spiritual? He doesn't have that command, so it shouldn't affect him. There are commands, there's 7 Noahide laws, and none of them have to do with keeping kosher. So it would seem it shouldn't be an issue at all. It's an interesting thing to think about. All the kosher animals have 2 kosher signs, like witnesses. In the Torah, the rule is that 2 witnesses are what we need to prove anything. Nothing is proven by 1 witness. Okay, you go to court and you have 1 witness that Ruvain killed Shimon. The court won't do anything. 1 witness has 0 value. 2 witnesses is all we need. 2 witnesses it's a done deal. It's a done deal. So animals to be kosher need like 2 witnesses. So it is interesting. In the list of kosher animals, right? So you have your we'll call them farm animals for lack of a better word, cows, right? They have to have split hooves, totally split, and they have to chew their cud. If you don't know what that means, go hang out on a farm. But what it really means is that the digestive system of an animal is different than a human, as we eat something and our stomachs just totally break it down. And then it gets, the junk becomes waste, gets filtered out, and the good stuff that our body needs and can use, that gets put back into our system. And however the body transports everything that has to be transported, that of course is a subject for another day. Grasshoppers have 2 signs. Like their wings have to cover the body, and they have this extra pair of jumping legs. It could be locusts, grasshoppers. There's 4 kinds that are kosher. We'll talk about this. It's interesting. We've talked about this in the past. If you come from Middle Eastern countries where grasshoppers or locusts were eaten, they knew which ones were kosher. So they have what we call a Kabbalah that they know from parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. They know what a kosher locust or grasshopper is. The European Jews did not have this Kabbalah. They didn't have this, the word is slipping my mind for now. They don't have great-great-grandparents to tell them what they were allowed to eat as far as the grasshoppers, so therefore they don't eat it. This will be important by birds coming up, by the way. Fish have fins. Right, that's what keeps them right balanced. And scales. Now scales, by the way, means that they easily come off. The scales easily come off. And even that, I was reading, it's debatable what's called easy to come off. Like some fish, you have to, maybe sturgeon, you have to like cook the fish to make the scales come off easily. And it's debatable amongst the rabbis. There's certain fish, swordfish and marlins, and again, the sturgeon. This has been a debate for hundreds of years on some of those fish. And like all things, the fact that it became debatable, it's just easier to say we're not doing it. Like, there's enough fish. You can have your tuna fish and your salmon and your perch or whatever. The only animal in the animal kingdom, right? We talk about fish and these grasshoppers and the cows and goats and sheep, and that carries over, by the way, to the deer and to that whole deer family. I guess the antelopes and the I don't know what, all those animals. And we're also kosher. Kosher birds is really just the opposite. In the Torah, the Torah doesn't mention what makes a bird kosher. It happens to be the rabbis do. And we're going to talk about that later, what the signs are. One of them, which goes back to what we're talking about, hunting birds are not kosher. And the question is, what does it mean, hunting birds? It's a way that they eat, right? And it's just they like hold down the prey with one hand, and the other hand like rips it, and then it eats the meat or whatever it's eating. We're going to talk about it, but hunting type birds are not kosher. Birds, it seems birds that would be hunted, but a lot of birds get hunted. Even the hunting bird gets hunted by other birds. So that we'll try to get into, but it also has to have like a toe. Yeah, it's like the 3 fingers in front and 1 toe in the back. Makes it, I believe, into a kosher bird, or it's the opposite. We'll see momentarily. I have to look at my notes. I mean, that has to do with its gizzard and crop, and it's got to be peeled. I don't know what that means even. I have no idea. But what's interesting is the Torah actually lists the non-kosher birds. It lists the non-kosher birds, and if you're not on the list, you're kosher. But of course, like all things, like how do I know if it's a cousin? Right? How do I know which birds are in this family, right? When the Torah lists the list of birds that are not kosher, so if you're in that family, you're not kosher. But we don't know what these words mean. We don't know how to translate all these birds. Even that's been debatable. Even at the time of the Talmud, they didn't even know what all these birds were. So therefore, basically the rule is, and this is something I want to spend time talking about, basically the rule is only if it's a bird that we've always been eating is kosher, and otherwise a problem. And we're going to talk about the turkey in a couple of minutes. One of the fascinating things that happens in this week's Torah portion is the Torah actually tells me that there are 4 animals that only have one of the 2 signs. Meaning it either has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its cud, or it chews its cud, and it doesn't have split hooves. And even, by the way, in that list, it's debatable what one of those animals are. If it's a type of hare or rock rabbit. They have a very hard time trying to figure out why that animal is considered that it chews its cud. But the fact of the matter is, the Torah says there's 4 animals, right? Camel chews its cud, doesn't have split hooves. The hooves are a little split, but not totally split. The pig has split hooves. It doesn't chew its cud. The pig is the only animal, by the way, with fully split hooves, but doesn't chew its cud. But in the pig family, by the way, you have the hippopotamus. If you look at the Latin family of what family is the hippopotamus in, it happens to be it's in the pig family. So those are the only animals you'll see with split hooves, but they don't chew their cud. And there's another two animals, and I'm not really sure what they are, because they say rock rabbit or hare or something, and it's hard to figure out exactly why it's considered that they chew their cud. But that is something to think about, right? The Torah is given to the Jewish people, millions of people in the desert. We lived in Egypt, right? We were not zoologists, if that's the right word. How many animals had we even seen? And even nowadays, they're always discovering new animals in the depths of Madagascar or the Amazon rainforest. And New Zealand, there are places, there's islands that there are new animals that have been discovered over the last 3,300 years that they didn't even know about in the time of when we received the Torah. So if the Torah was written by God, okay, so God knows all the animals. He has no problem. God has no problem writing that there's 4 animals with 1 sign, not 2 signs. And no one's discovered in 3,300 years any new breed of animal that's got one and not the other, which is amazing. But no man, no human being in his right mind, could be a lady, right? No human being in their right mind would ever go ahead and say you will never, ever in history find an animal with 1 sign and not 2 signs. There's no such thing. Because the Torah is written by God. Right? If you need a proof, this week's Torah portion is the proof. But I want to take some time to talk about the turkey. And I like turkey. I mean, it's more dark meat. I used to actually eat turkey necks. We would actually put turkey necks in our cholent. It's a Shabbos dish. Very sweet. The turkey neck, it's bigger than a regular chicken neck. There's actually a little bit of meat on it. As a kid growing up, I loved the drumstick of the turkey. I loved that. And that was like, I enjoyed that. But even cold cuts, right? Turkey pastrami, right? So the problem is like this. If you say that the only nowadays, since we don't know how to exactly identify which birds are which, we're afraid to identify that this is a kosher bird and this is not a kosher bird, even though the Talmud has its own signs. How to eat turkey? The turkey is a North American bird. They didn't have it in Europe. They didn't have it in Africa, right? So I'm not saying that Moses didn't have turkey. Maybe he did. I have no idea. Right? It's a little bit irrelevant, right? But for hundreds, thousands of years, nobody knew what a turkey was. If nobody knew what a turkey was, that means your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-great never saw a turkey. So it's beautiful that it may seem to have all the signs of a kosher bird, but if our grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents never ate it, then we don't eat it. But everybody eats turkey. Almost everybody. So the question is, right, so how do you eat? So as we said before, the 4 signs I have written in my notes over here, it's called pouncing, this extra toe, which is facing the other way, and the crab and the gizzard can be easily peeled, fine. The fact of the matter is, right, how do we eat the turkey? How? Very interesting. How is it that we ate it? So it seems, for whatever strange reason, when turkeys were brought back to Europe, and it became available, all the Jews in Europe started eating it. So now it's a little bit backwards. Now, by the way, they didn't even know that the turkey was native to America. In Hebrew, the turkey is called the tarnagol is usually a rooster or a chicken. Hodu is India. They thought it was called the Indian chicken. They thought it came from India. And therefore they believed that the Indians had a tradition that it was kosher. So they started eating it. So now here it's like backwards. As the rule is, I can't start eating something that I don't have a tradition for. But just because I never had a tradition, I can't make something forbidden. Now, if I have a tradition that's forbidden, you could tell me that no one can eat it. But if there was never a tradition to forbid the turkey, and all of a sudden everybody's eating it, even though they shouldn't have been, you can't make it forbidden. Right? That's fascinating. Another interesting answer is this concept that we wouldn't eat birds unless we had a tradition to eat them. That tradition didn't start till the late 1500s. And we were already eating the turkey by then. It's an interesting idea. And another possible answer is that it seems, again, this is not my department, but it seems you can crossbreed turkeys and chickens. They're cousins. I don't think you could just crossbreed any bird that you want. The only birds that crossbreed are birds that are related, like they're in the same family. To be able to crossbreed birds, again, this I don't know if this is true, but there are those who want to say that the fact that it can be crossbred means a cousin, therefore they're allowed to be eaten. Okay. So the turkey is called Hodu, which, again, the country Hodu is India. But the word Hodu happens to mean, in Hebrew, thank you. So I saw a story. The joint, that's the joint distribution, they're called the joint. They supported Jews in Europe. They exist nowadays. Their purpose is to support Jews in need. That is their purpose. When things were going on in Ukraine, when the war started, they're trying to get Jews out of Ukraine. All of a sudden, they, raised millions of dollars to take care of Ukrainian Jews. I'm sure they raised millions, hundreds of millions to take care of Israel when the war started. In 1929, because of the stock market crash, their funds ran very low. And at one point, they were supporting a lot of Jewish schools in Europe, a lot of yeshivas, and they didn't know what to do. So they went to the Yeshivas Darchei Torah, and they said to him, what should we do? How should we approach them without they're taking away our support? And the Yeshivas Darchei Torah said, you should say thank you. Right? They can't support you, they can't support you, but at least thank them for what they've done in the past. That you have to be able to do. Okay, let's fast forward. Corona was not so long ago. Oh, we can't finish the story. Maybe next week we'll finish the story. But anyways, the music is playing. I hope you enjoyed it. Short and sweet. Thank you, of course, to all our wonderful sponsors and listeners. I can't do it without you. Thank you to my wonderful production team. I have Alan in the back today. I hope I've left you with some food for thought. Until next time, I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. You've been listening to Let's Talk Torah on NRM Streamcast. Until next time, don't forget to think about it.
There's a house we can build. Every room inside is filled with things from far away. Special things